have it for our future and hopefully can share out. For introductions, my name is Rebecca Garcia, and I am the president of the Nevada Parent-Teacher Association. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I live in Clark County, Nevada, in Las Vegas. And I am joined by our Vice President of Advocacy, Allison Turner, and our state legislative chair and a member of our board, Kali Fox Miller. So grateful to have all of you joining us tonight. Advocacy, we often say, is the heart of PTA. And so really want to be able to share from a very high level, basic view, kind of the nuts and bolts of how to get started and how to be an effective advocate in different areas of our state and community. If you're unfamiliar with Zoom, we are using the webinar tonight. And so you're welcome to put in the chat. There's also a Q&A where you can put questions if you have them. And we'll be working together to try to answer your questions during the course of the night, or also we'll cover them at the end if we don't get to them during the normal discussion. But again, thank you for being with us. And please feel free to put those questions so that we can help answer those. And so we want to start by talking about what is advocacy. And it's a big word. I think some of us use it a lot in our daily life, and others of us don't use it hardly at all. And so it just feels like, what's this big word? Really, it's just influence or support or opposition to a cause, an idea, a policy. A lot of us advocate in our families, in our communities all the time, and probably don't even realize that we're doing it. And it comes in so many different ways. It can be just that, you want to convince your friends that we should go, and this is a horrible example in 2021, but that you all want to go to one restaurant and half of you want to, the other go to another restaurant. We don't go to restaurants these days, right? But anyway, back when we did, or it can be more formal with attending meetings, sending emails, or working with cause-related groups that you're connected with. PTA obviously is formed with community members, parents, teachers, and Allison introduced me to this metaphor, and I always find that it just works so beautifully. Parents, caregivers, people who care about kids are just natural advocates. And I love this example of at the doctor, right? When you go to the doctor with your 6-year-old or your 7 or even your 13-year-old, you're, as a parent or a caregiver, you're helping that process, explaining, did they take their medicine? Did they not? When did they get sick? What happened? And really that's being an advocate. You're doing it because you know that information, you know that child, and you want to get what's best for them. And that's really the heart of what advocacy is all about. PTA is the oldest and largest child advocacy association in America. Our mission statement is, our mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. We frequently use the tagline, every child, one voice. Our goal is to help make sure all kids have the resources they need to reach that, whatever it is in life that they want for themselves. And does advocacy make a difference? I love a quote from one of the founders of PTA, Alice Burney, I always mispronounce her name, where she talks about that we need to quit squawking about what we can't fix, essentially, because there's a lot we can do. And really, that is the heart of why we want to share this information about advocacy with everybody in our community, is because over the course of PTA's history, we've seen how committed people, everyday citizens from all sorts of different backgrounds who are united around the idea of improving lives of children, have made a tremendous impact by uniting their voices together for something better. That led to kindergarten classes, public health service, mandatory immunizations for school children, juvenile justice, arts and education, school safety. It is amazing what can happen when people who may not feel like they have much power come together and work to improve the lives of others. And our goal is to help you have those tools for whatever you're passionate about so that you can raise your voice. And part of that is making sure you're effective. A lot of us have opinions, right? We all have an idea of what we like or don't like or what should or shouldn't happen. But sometimes, and we see it a lot right now, like on social media and places, a lot of people say something, but are we being effective about using our voice? Where and when we share what we care about makes a difference onto whether or not something's going to happen. Also, to recognize that a lot of times people think that you have to have some sort of special training or be a phenomenal public speaker, or Kali is our attorney, not Nevada PTA's attorney. She is an attorney in real life. So obviously she has great skills in that regard. That isn't what is most important in advocacy. What's most important in advocacy is your story. And that doesn't require a degree. It doesn't require special training because it's your story. But knowing how best to share it is really the most important part. Also want to point out as we go into this, you don't have to have all the answers. You know, we advocate a lot around school funding. We aren't necessarily budget experts or taxation experts, but I'm a mom of 4 kids who've gone through an education system that has never provided adequately for their needs. I see the impact of budget cuts after budget cuts. That's what I can share my story on. So don't feel like you have to have every answer or every solution in order to be an advocate and share your story. So tonight, we've kind of organized this small, what I think of as small to large. And so we're going to start off at your school, because that's for most parents and teachers and community, that's a place where a lot of people start wanting to say something. So we're going to start at the school level, move to district, state, and then ultimately the federal level or our nation. And so starting at our school level, I'm going to pass it over to Kali so you don't have to listen to me all night long. We're going to be bouncing back and forth.
All right, so we're going to talk about using your voice at school. One of the best ways that you can use your voice at school is to volunteer. Volunteering helps you to get engaged in what's going on in your school and helps you to learn about their issues and their needs. It helps you to be a person who is already helping to provide a solution, which gives you a seat at the table. And there are some great ways to volunteer with your school. Of course, we're going to always recommend the PTA, your Parent-Teacher Association. At some schools, you have a parent-teacher organization, the PTO. At some schools, you have parent advisory committees related to certain subjects. And down here in Clark County, you have school organizational teams. Each one of these groups is going to give you an opportunity to meet on a regular basis and to discuss what's going on in your child's school, so that if there are problems and issues that may be affecting your child, you learn about them first instead of learning about them when they become a problem. All right, the second thing we want you to keep in mind is know the rules. All public schools have to abide by special or specific laws and regulations. They can't really go outside of these rules. So these rules dictate what child gets what programs, what services, etc. So if you want them to go against these rules, it creates kind of a friction because they have these laws and regulations that they have to stay within. So knowing that helps you to best advocate for what your child needs. You also want to know the criteria for certain things. For instance, if your child needs an IEP, there's certain criteria that you have to meet for that. So you want to know what it takes to get the things that your child requires. And you want to know specifically what the minimum federal standards are, because every school has to provide those. And you also want to discuss with decision makers how the current laws are affecting your family. And sometimes decision makers can be as easy as co-parent, like fellow parents. So You know, sometimes parent-to-parent communication can be your greatest tool because you can discuss how someone has been where you have been before. And also, parents who sit on those organizations that we just talked about also can help form school policy. Having one or two voices in your corner can be a very effective tool when it comes to talking to teachers and administrators. And we would love to have you guys join our new Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/NVPTA voice. This is going to allow us to discuss all issues affecting our kids with other parents who may have been there before and have tips and tricks for us to help us navigate through situations. All right, and then you want to get to know your decision makers. Like I said, people are more willing to listen to those who they honestly think are trying to help them to do a better job, instead of what we perceive as just showing up to complain. Although it's never that, right? But you want to have a good open dialogue with the people at your child's school. So the first person you want to talk to is always the teacher. You want a consistent, open line of communication with your child's teachers. The second people you want to get to know is administrators. And so volunteering on those committees will actually help you get to know your child's administrators in both a casual and formal setting, so that every time you speak, you're not necessarily speaking about problems, but that you're developing a rapport. All right, and the third person you want to look is the district. If you're having problems that just can't be addressed at the absolute local level, then you want to know what what the chain of command is for your school. You want to know who is your administrator's boss and what department you may need to go to fix a problem. All right. And then I'm going to pass it off to Allison.
Thank you so much, Khalid. Hi, everybody. So I think I'm going to reemphasize what Khalid just said, and that is know the chain of command. Don't, I know sometimes it's tempting to just go straight to the top, right? The district does have rules. Any school district has rules, and they do have a chain of command. It's important to know who the people are in it for sure. You need to know who your superintendent is. You need to know what the central office departments look like. You especially need to know who you vote for as your school board trustee. When they have meetings, when the whole board has meetings, is there a parent advisory committee? Are you on social media? Can you follow them? There's an incredible amount of information that's exchanged all over the place all the time. And it's just kind of tapping into all of that. And it's important to know the structure. There are two different sides, and they all build into one organization. Part of it is operations. So in most school districts, the superintendent reports to the board of trustees, right? But everybody else in the operations side reports to the superintendent. And then there's the governance side. And generally speaking, that is your board of trustees. And they're responsible for policies and structure and those kinds of things. But it's important to understand the distinction between the two. It's really important, especially if you're trying to deal with an issue or a concern. Well, let me back up. Nope, I'm going to reiterate something that Khalees said first. First and foremost, you need to make relationships with these people, and it's best if you can do it before there's a problem. You want to introduce yourself to your child's teacher, to the principal, to the office staff at the school. And once you're trying to advocate and or affect change for your student or your family, it's really important to keep records. Maintaining an organized file can just be putting each piece of paper, in front of all the rest of them, so they're in some kind of order. You need to take notes during telephone and face-to-face meetings and ask for people's full names and their contact information. This is all about, I think that's where we go on the next slide, but it's all about communicating effectively and making sure that you have records about what's been said, when, and to whom. So communicating effectively, that was a great transition, huh? Be clear, calm, and direct when speaking. And for that matter, well, don't, I think it was my mom who said, don't start off screaming. That's a bad place, because if you start out screaming, you have no place to go. So you want to try to be calm, be clear and direct. You need to listen to what the responses are and think about making sure you're providing all the information. Avoid assumptions. I was fortunate to learn this early on. Remember that when your child comes home and tells you about something, that's one side, right? And so I always made sure, absent something really dreadful, but I always made sure that when I went to speak with the teacher, I would say, I understand that I'm getting this from my 8-year-old's perspective, for example. And that helped make the teacher or the administrator a lot more responsive to whatever I needed help with. Don't just be a critic, identify options and solutions. I mean, I've seen this in my corporate life also, right? Don't just bring me your problems, but tell me if you have ideas about solutions or options, please bring those with you, right? Plan to follow up. And that's again where that record keeping comes in so handy. And just because you get a no, it doesn't mean the conversation's over. It might mean that you need to regroup or rethink, but it doesn't mean the conversation's over, especially if you've been working on that relationship so that you can communicate back and forth. Don't sweat the small stuff, right? If it's a small thing that you can adjust to, please remember to pick your battles, right? I think we all learn to do that with our kids as well. Try not to take things personally. It's very seldom personal. Consider both sides. We kind of talked about that, and try to find some common ground somewhere in the middle. Details are important, but again, this kind of goes back to don't sweat the small stuff. Don't let them get in the way of coming to a good outcome. And partnership is very powerful. It makes a big difference if you are trying to be on the same team that is delivering the best for your student, right? I'm going to pass it back over to Kali here, and she's going to take us on the journey to the state level.
All right, so let's talk about using your voice at the state level. Education issues are often state issues. And one of our biggest topics here in the state of Nevada is always education funding. State elected officials determine how funding is allocated to our schools. And then our local boards create the budgets on how state allocated funds are spent. So we have a variety of laws and regulations that are passed each legislative session that impact our children immensely. One of the most impactful in recent years was the reorganization, AB 469, which created the SOTs down here in Clark County. So you want to know who your elected officials are. And Rebecca's going to talk about this a little later, but we actually have a tool called Voter Voice. And the best thing about this tool is that if you go in and you just type in your address, it will tell you who each and every single person that you vote for, who represents you, is. So you want to know your governor, which here in the state of Nevada, it's Steve Sisolak. And you also want to know your state legislators. You want to know who your assemblyman is, who your senator is. And you want to keep in mind that we have citizen legislators. That means that our legislators are part-time and they're often very reachable in your community. I've never had an instance where I have emailed or called a legislator and they've not gotten back to me, even when they're not my own personal legislator. So if there's a topic that's really near and dear to your heart, most of them do not mind sitting down and having a cup of coffee with you and discussing it. And the legislature meets every 2 years. So our legislature will convene on February 1st. And they typically go over their time. So they'll start February. I think they're supposed to end around May, but they'll go until like July. You also want to know about the Department of Education. The Superintendent of Public Education is Joan Ebert here in the state of Nevada. Our state board of education is a hybrid board. There is a mix of elected and appointed members. So you also have an elected state board of education member. And remember that Nevada is a local control state. All right, so in our state legislature, our legislative sessions, as I said before, they're every other year, and they're approximately 120 days, and they are held in Carson City. If you want to watch them locally here in Las Vegas, you can go to the Grant Sawyer building it's on Washington and Las Vegas Boulevard. And many of the interim committees are also held in that building. And this becomes really important if there's a particular issue that matters to you. Let's say that you want to put your name down and testify as to how it's impacting you. And if there is ever an issue like that, once again, please reach out to our advocacy team because we would love to help support you in that. And you also want to join us in our legislative. The more the merrier. So to view legislation online, you want to go to the state legislature website, which is www.leg.state.nv.us. And there's a system called Nellis that can help you look up and track bills. You can actually track up to 10 bills for free. So if there are some bills that you want to follow to see how they impact your child, that's a great way to do it at absolutely no cost to you, and it will send you updates every time something happens in that bill. You can also stream committee meetings, and you can see which ones will allow for public comment. They typically do public comment in person, virtually, and written or via email. You can share your opinion online about specific bills, and it will also give you the information to contact your representatives. And they love hearing from people. They often get spammed with messages that are all similar and all alike. So if they can hear an individual story, they really appreciate that. And the most important thing to remember is that your voice matters. Nevada is so unique in that we are becoming a big state, but we act like a small state. Accessing our elected officials is so much easier here than it is in other places. I don't know many states where you can text your assembly person and they will text you right back. But I do that with mine all the time. And you don't want to wait until the legislative session to contact your representative. Reaching out in between sessions can absolutely change the direction that they're heading when it comes to education policy. I have seen time and time again, an assemblyman or a state senator take a conversation that they've had with somebody and begin to research it before the next session, and then try to enact that and put it into law. You want to share your personal story and your personal experience, because that's going to matter more to them than any lobbyist ever will. I think it's one of the greatest farces that lobbyists win the day. I honestly think it's personal stories that win the day. If you can explain to them why this issue matters and how it has impacted your life, they will sincerely try to help you. And also keep in mind what Rebecca said, you do not have to be an expert. We're not all experts in everything, even on the state PTA board. But what you want to be is an expert in what has impacted you. Because they can then turn around and find experts that can help solve the problem. And most importantly, and I think we all know that this is one of the most important things in our society, we want you to vote. Because we fix problems when we vote. And it's just that simple.
Okay, so I think I'm up again, right? You certainly want also to be able to use your voice in our nation. This is one thing that people don't always realize. There is your local PTA, there is the state PTA, and there's also a national PTA. All of those resources are also available to you. So using your voice at the national level is mostly the same and just a tiny bit different. I'm going to reiterate something Kali said. Kali, you're saying so many great things. I keep doing that. I got to go back and underscore. Your elected officials want to hear from you. That includes your United States congressman. That includes both of your United States senators. That includes your school board trustee. It includes your state assemblyman, your state senator. So remember, they do want to hear from you because they need to serve the needs of their constituents. So at the national level, there are all kinds of things that impact children and education, especially here in Nevada. So there are several listed here. I'll add another one. School lunch. School lunch policy is to a great extent set at the national level. And those things we also try to keep people up to speed on and let you know when something significant is happening and try to provide a simple way for you to be able to reach out to your legislators at the federal level as well. And this is a really good point. Just in case you don't know, the federal government actually owns, it's well north of 80% of the land in the state of Nevada. It's one of the reasons our tax base winds up being a little bit challenging. So we do actually rely on federal investment many times to provide essential programs and services. So use your voice in our nation. So yes, you can certainly go to that website. I would also very much encourage you to do just what Kali, I'm back to you again. You're doing such a great job. But go to Voter Voice for Nevada PTA. All of this information is there along with direct links so that you can get in touch with your federal level legislators as well. The state of Nevada currently has 2 United States senators, as every state does. And right now we have 4 congressmen and women. And those names are listed below there. Again, Voter Voice can lead you to exactly who your congressman or congresswoman is if you don't know. The only real difference at the national level is, although I'm a big believer in dropping a personal note from time to time, that doesn't work at the national level. Anything that comes via snail mail basically goes through a huge security protocol and usually doesn't see the light of day in anybody's office for a good couple of months. That may have gotten worse with the recent problems with the United States Postal Service. So get connected to your members of Congress. So each member of Congress has local offices to provide constituent services and support. And again, they want to help you or meet your needs. If you have a question or a concern or an issue, they want to hear from you. You can follow them on social media on all of their official accounts, which can be a great way to kind of keep up with what's going on an immediate basis. You can also certainly sign up for their newsletters. They want to let you know what a great job they're doing for you, I promise. They want to communicate with you. There are frequently, in times that are not this particular one with COVID, town halls and events. Many of those are still happening virtually. We can certainly help get you hooked up with that, but so can all of those offices. If you're interested in particular legislation, we are happy to try to provide help with that. National PTA also has resources to help you find legislation that's coming before Congress that's going to affect children and families and schools and communities. And we urge you to contact them to share your story and your opinions. One of the easiest way to reach out to a federal legislator is to call the toll-free number. There's one for the House and there's one for the Senate. You will be connected with their office. You probably won't speak with your elected official, but you will speak with a staff person, and they will take down exactly what your thoughts are on whatever the legislation is. And again, they want to hear from you. It's a quick and painless process. Once you do it a couple of times, you'll never look back, I promise. Know your resources. And I think I'm going back to Rebecca here, am I not?
You are. I need to get myself unmuted. Thank you. And, you know, Kali and Allison have said many times that your elected officials want to hear from you. And I think sometimes if you aren't really into politics, what you may think of elected officials is a whole bunch of fighting and loud noise and things that maybe you don't want to stick yourself in the middle of after watching on the news, right? But it's amazing when I talk to elected officials. I just talked to an assemblywoman 2 days ago. And one of her first things she told me is that people think I hear from parents or community regularly about just everyday life issues, and I don't. She's like, I hear from a lot of people who are paid to talk to me, but not nearly as much from just the everyday people. And exactly what has been said already, she said, I want to hear more from people, like what is happening in people's lives and how could we make that better? And also to recognize that you don't always have to agree with your elected official. And in many cases, you probably won't agree with them on everything. I mean, that's rarely going to happen. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't still express your opinions. And if you do that, and again, as we've said several times, if you consistently try to reach out and know who they are, that also is a bridge builder that helps you have more of that connection. And sometimes at the federal level, as Allison pointed out, you might be talking to a staffer, but often for certain causes, for example, Senator Rosen's office, for 2+ years, we've dealt with the exact same staffer on education issues and know and hear from her frequently on education issues. So we may not talk to the senator, but there's somebody who we're talking to who's part of that process, and we have talked to the senator, but that staff member is serving a really important role because that's who's telling the senator what's happening and what they should do or what they shouldn't do. So don't feel like because you didn't at the national level, because you talked to a staffer, that wasn't good enough. That person is still really important in getting your message across. I think Allison already said that. I just had to add my 2 cents to it. So the biggest thing about advocacy is that in some cases, you can do it on your own, and that's great. But if you want to get involved with issues at the state or national level, or even in the community, frequently you're going to be more powerful if you connect your voice with an advocacy organization that fits and aligns with what you care about. And that that can change over the course of your lifetime, what's most important to you. But there's a lot of wonderful organizations that want to help raise your voice, whether it's on healthcare and maybe the Diabetes Association, or for us, our focus is children and families. But there's a lot of organizations that will help elevate your voice related to issues that you care about. We invite you to join with us, the Nevada PTA, in federal advocacy efforts. A lot of the attention sometimes happens with local and state, but we try to always have our hand or our communication lines open with our federal delegation, our members of Congress, because federal policy really does impact us. If you are a PTA member, or we'd invite you to become one if you're not, we have a great opportunity in March for our legislative conference. It's going to be held all virtually this year, and Nevada PTA is helping sponsor that for any of our members who want to attend. And you can just email office@nevadapta.org, and we will pay for your registration to be part of the Nevada delegation for that legislative conference in March, which includes Hill visits, virtual. It's more fun, I'll be honest. I'm gonna miss not getting to go to Washington, DC and walk the halls, but my feet will much appreciate the virtual option. And the cool thing about that is now we can have even more people in front of our representatives. And also National PTA gives great information that's bipartisan. So that's one thing that we didn't point out. As an organization, PTA is nonpartisan. We always advocate with all parties and always work with all elected officials. We may not always agree, but we do not align with any particular party. And so we try to provide information that matches that as well, so that people can make the decision that works best for them. Voter voice was teased several times. So this is a option that we want to make sure people are aware of. It's votervoice.net/NVPTA/home. And you can find your representative. You can sign up to receive action alerts from us and get more information also on your representatives so that you can contact them and get in touch with them. And now I'm going to stop sharing this and check the chat to see if there's any questions that have come in. We wanted tonight to stay really high level so that everybody can, I know sometimes when we get into advocacy, we use a lot of words that maybe are new to some. And so wanted to stay at that basic level. But if there are questions that anybody has about these things, please feel free to let us know. We will also, in a follow-up email, be sending this PowerPoint presentation. So all the links and everything like that, you'll be able to access afterwards in case you missed one of those. And I'm not seeing any questions unless maybe I just missed them. So thank you all. Oh, I just saw, is there a question? Thank you for sending out the slides. Yes. It's always hard to listen and take notes and try to capture. So we want to make sure we get those out to you so you're able to take advantage of all of those resources.
Rebecca, if I may, I just want to make a note that Kali did a super job by putting the link to check out Voter Voice. She put it right in the chat. So if that's something you'd like to even take a look at, you can go click on it right there, right now, and have that link up and ready for you when you're ready for it.
Perfect. And again, our goal as the PTA advocacy team is to help ensure that people understand how to be most effective. You know, again, there's going to be instances in life as a parent or as just a citizen where you need help, you disagree or agree strongly with something. And how do you have your voice be part of all of our democratic processes? And I think even if we had civics class, for some of us, that was a while ago. I keep thinking I'm young, but it was still 2 decades ago. And so we don't necessarily think about that always until the time comes when we want to get engaged. And so our goal at PTA is to help ensure that our members and the community have the tools and resources so that you can be connected and effective. And so PTA membership is open to anyone in our state who cares about kids. If you believe in the mission statement that we shared, you're invited to be a member. I see our VP of membership is on the chat and made sure to drop that link as well. So thank you, Meredith. But regardless, member or not, our resources are open and available so that you can help share with your community how to power up your voice, how to be engaged, and how to help our community become better. Because I think that's something we can all agree on at this point in our country, regardless of what your political beliefs are. We're at a critical point where we can move forward. And the more engaged we are as citizens, the more engaged we are as a community, the better our community will be for all people and all children, because everybody's voice needs to be heard. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight. Thank you, Kali and Allison, 2 great resources. If you want to get in touch with any of us, if you go to nevadapta.org, all of our email addresses are on our website, and you are welcome to contact us for further information. Or if you have an organization that you'd like us to share this information with or to get connected with, we are always looking for opportunities to collaborate and help encourage this message of getting people engaged. Allison or Kali, any final words before we sign off?
I have to jump back in. Everybody knows what a passionate advocate I am, but I also want to support Meredith. And this is kind of sometimes it's a misconception. So joining the statewide Battleborn PTA is a whopping $10 per year. So this is not a high dues level. Please come and join us. We try to make sure that we keep those numbers low and reasonable so that anybody who wants to be a part of PTA can be. Thank you.
And we care about your membership because it adds to our voice, not really because we care about the $10. Just, I always like to have to add that because we want to be able to say when we go in front of organizations, I'm representing our 18,000 members because it makes a big difference.
And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to welcome you guys to the Nevada PTA Facebook page and our PTA advocacy group. And I look forward to keeping the conversation going on what's affecting you every day.
Well, thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Good night.